doctors at the prestigious Mayo Clinic said it was impossible. They said 10-year-old Lily Sterling would never take another step, her legs withered and useless, her spirit broken by a mystery illness that baffled the world's top specialists. Her mother, Billionaire CEO Isabel Sterling, had spent a fortune trying to save her, only to be told to give up hope. Then came Caleb Reed, a man with grease under his fingernails, a tragic past, and zero medical license. He didn't come to be her doctor. He came to fix the pool, but what he found in that mansion wasn't just a sick child. It was a dark secret that someone was willing to kill to keep. Watch carefully, because the method he used to make her walk again defied science, broke the law, and left her mother sobbing on the floor. This is the story they didn't want you to know. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall. It hammered against the earth, trying to bury everything in mud and grey. For Caleb Reed, that suited him just fine. He wanted to be buried. He wanted to be invisible. At 34, Caleb was a ghost of the man he used to be. Once, his name had been whispered in the halls of Johns Hopkins as a prodigy in neurokinetic therapy. Now, his name was just the guy you yelled at when your transmission wasn't fixed on time at Sal's auto body. He wiped his hands on a greasy rag, the smell of oil and old coffee clinging to his jumpsuit. His phone buzzed, a text from his ex-wife, demanding child support for a daughter he was barely allowed to see. He ignored it. He couldn't pay it anyway. "Reed, front desk," Sal yelled from the office. "VIP client. Don't mess this up, or you're done." Caleb walked out to the bay. There, gleaming like a black diamond amidst the grime of the shop, was a Bentley Bentayga. Leaning against it was a woman who looked like she could buy the entire city block and fire everyone on it just for sport. Isabel Sterling. Everyone knew who she was. The Ice Queen of Tech, CEO of Sterling Dynamics. Her face was on the cover of Forbes and Vogue in the same month. In person, she was terrifyingly beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, eyes the color of cold steel, and a posture that screamed control. But Caleb, trained to look for the breaks in the human body, saw something else. He saw the tension in her trapezius muscles, the slight tremor in her hand as she held her phone, the redness around the rims of her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She wasn't just a billionaire. She was a woman holding on by a thread. "My driver said the suspension feels off," Isabel said, her voice crisp, not looking at him. "I have a gala in 2 hours. Fix it." Caleb knelt by the wheel well. He didn't need a lift to know what was wrong. He ran his hand along the strut, his fingers sensitive and precise, the same fingers that used to map nerve pathways. "It's not the suspension," Caleb said quietly. "It's the actuator on the active ride control. It's overcompensating on the left." Isabel paused, looking down at him. "How could you possibly know that without lifting the car?" "I can feel the vibration variance in the chassis," Caleb stood up, meeting her eyes. "And I noticed your daughter in the back seat creates a specific weight distribution shift. She hasn't moved an inch since you pulled in." Isabel stiffened. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Leave my daughter out of this." "She's in pain, isn't she?" Caleb pressed, ignoring his survival instinct. He looked through the tinted window. He could see the silhouette of a child, slumped awkwardly in a custom car seat, the way the car is vibrating. If she has spinal sensitivity, this ride is torture for her. "You're a mechanic," Isabel snapped, her voice cracking slightly. "Fix the car. Don't diagnose my family." "I can fix the actuator in 10 minutes, Caleb said, grabbing a wrench. "But that child needs her headrest adjusted 5 degrees forward, or she's going to have a migraine that lasts 3 days. Isabel stared at him. For a second, the billionaire mask slipped. She looked exhausted. She looked like a mother who had tried everything and failed. Without asking permission, Caleb opened the back door. "What are you doing?" Isabel lunged forward, her security detail stepping in, but Caleb was already there. The girl, Lily, looked about 10. She was pale, fragile as a porcelain doll, her legs strapped into braces. She was grimacing, tears streaming silently down her face. Caleb didn't speak. He gently placed his hand behind her neck. He didn't massage, he just applied a specific, calculated pressure to the occipital ridge. Lily gasped. Then her shoulders dropped. The grimace vanished. For the first time in hours, she exhaled deeply. "Better?" Caleb whispered. Lily looked at him with wide, shocked eyes. She nodded slowly. Caleb stepped back, closing the door. He turned to face Isabel, who was frozen, her mouth slightly open. The security guard lowered his hand. "That's a temporary relief for occipital neuralgia," Caleb said, wiping his hands on his rag again. "I'll fix your actuator now." He went back to work. 10 minutes later, the Bentley was fixed. He handed the keys back to Isabel. She didn't take them immediately. She was studying him, analyzing him like he was a line of code she couldn't debug. "Who are you?" she asked. "Caleb," he said. "Just a mechanic." "Mechanics don't know how to treat neuralgia, that the head of neurology at Mount Sinai missed," she said sharply. She pulled a card from her purse, black titanium with gold lettering. "My daughter has gone through 7 physical therapists in 6 months. They treat her like glass. You touched her like she was a machine that needed tuning." "People are machines," Caleb said, turning away. "Just softer parts." "Come to my house tomorrow," Isabel commanded. It wasn't an offer. 8 a.m., 1400 Skyline Drive. "I'm not a doctor, lady. I lost that life a long time ago." "I don't care what you are," Isabel said, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper that only he could hear. "You stopped her pain. No one else has done that in 2 years. Name your price." Caleb looked at the grease on his hands. He thought about his empty bank account. He thought about his own daughter, who he couldn't afford to buy a birthday present for. "I charge $50 an hour for labor," Caleb said. Isabel scoffed, a sad, cynical sound. "I'll pay you $5,000 a week, but if you hurt her, I will destroy you." She got in the car and drove away, leaving Caleb standing in the rain, wondering if he had just made a deal with the devil, or if he was the one who needed saving. 1400 Skyline Drive wasn't a house. It was a fortress of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It was cold, sterile, and breathtakingly expensive. Caleb arrived in his rusted Ford truck, the engine sputtering as it climbed the winding driveway. The gate security checked his ID 3 times before letting him through. When he parked next to a row of luxury sports cars, he felt like a stain on a silk sheet. The front door was opened not by Isabel, but by a man in a sharp grey suit. He had a perfectly groomed beard and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You must be the mechanic," the man said, the word dripping with disdain. "I'm Arthur Pendleton, Mrs. Sterling's personal legal counsel and family advisor. I'm here to see Lily," Caleb said, stepping past him. "Mrs. Sterling is in a conference call with Tokyo. She asks me to vet you," Arthur said, blocking his path. "Let me be clear, Mr. Reed. I've looked into your background. I know about the incident at St. Jude S. I know why. You lost your license." Caleb's jaw tightened. The memory flashed. The operating room, the beeping monitors, the accusation that had ruined his life. "Then you know I was cleared of criminal negligence." "But not of arrogance." Arthur stepped closer, smelling of expensive cologne and malice. "Lily is the heiress to $1 billion trust. She is fragile. If you are here to scam a desperate mother with some faith-healing voodoo, I will have you buried under so many lawsuits your grandchildren will be born bankrupt." "Get out of my way, Arthur," a voice cut through the hall. Isabel stood at the top of the grand staircase. She was wearing a white silk blouse and black trousers, looking severe and exhausted. "He's here on my orders." Arthur bowed his head slightly, his smile tight. "Of course, Isabel. I'm just looking out for the family's best interests. We can't have another disappointment. Remember Dr. Halloway?" Isabel flinched. "Show him to the West Wing, Arthur." The West Wing of the mansion had been converted into a private hospital. It smelled of antiseptic and despair. There were machines worth more than Caleb's life earnings beeping rhythmically. And in the center of the room, sitting in a high-tech wheelchair facing the window, was Lily. She didn't turn around when they entered. "Lily," Isabel said, her voice softening into a heartbreaking gentleness. "This is Caleb, the man from yesterday." Lily turned her head slowly. Her eyes were large, blue, and empty. She looked like she had given up a long time ago. Her legs were covered by a blanket. Caleb walked over, ignoring Arthur, who was hovering like a vulture in the corner. He didn't say hello. He didn't use the high-pitched kid voice adults usually used. He walked around the wheelchair and looked at the monitors. "Resting heart rate 95, Caleb muttered. "Oxygen sat 98. Why is she on a dilated muscle relaxant drip?" Arthur stepped forward. "Dr. Aris Thorne prescribed that. He is the leading specialist in pediatric motor neuron degeneration. It manages her spasms." "She doesn't have motor neuron degeneration," Caleb said flatly. The room went silent. Isabel's eyes went wide. Arthur laughed, a dry, barking sound. "Excuse me," Arthur sneered. "Dr. Thorne is a Nobel nominee, and you change tires for a living." "Motor neuron degeneration is progressive," Caleb said, his eyes scanning Lily's arms. "Look at her deltoids. She has muscle tone. If it were degeneration, she'd be atrophied by now. She's not moving her legs because her brain is telling her not to, not because the nerves are dead. And that drip, it's flooding her system with sedative. It's not stopping spasms. It's keeping her chemically paralyzed." "That is an outrageous accusation," Arthur shouted. "Isabel, get this lunatic out of here." Isabel looked from Arthur to Caleb. She looked at her daughter, who was watching Caleb with a spark of something that hadn't been there before. Curiosity. "Prove it," Isabel whispered. Caleb looked at Lily. "Lily, do you trust me?" Lily didn't speak. She just stared. "I'm going to hurt you for a second," Caleb said, "but you have to trust me." Before Arthur could lunge, Caleb took a pen from his pocket and jammed the blunt end hard into the sole of Lily's paralyzed foot. It happened in a split second. Lily screamed. Her leg, the leg that was supposed to be dead, the leg that hadn't moved in 2 years, jerked backward violently, kicking the tray of medical instruments over with a loud crash. Silence descended on the room. Heavy, suffocating silence. Caleb tossed the pen onto the bed. She felt pain, and she had a reflex withdrawal. Her nerves are intact. He turned to a pale, trembling Isabel. "Your daughter isn't paralyzed, Mrs. Sterling. She's been trapped in her own body, and someone in this house has been making sure she stays that way." Arthur's face went from smug to ghostly white. He reached for his phone. "I'm calling security." "No," Isabel said. Her voice was low, dangerous. She walked over to Lily, who was crying, not from pain, but from shock. She had moved. She had actually moved. Isabel looked at Caleb, tears welling in her steel-grey eyes. "You're hired. You move into the guest house. Today." "And Arthur?" Caleb asked, eyeing the lawyer. "Arthur," Isabel said, not looking at the man. "Get Dr. Thorne on the phone. Tell him if he doesn't get here in an hour, I'm calling the FBI." As Arthur stormed out, Caleb looked down at Lily. She reached out a small, trembling hand and grabbed his pinky finger. "You fixed the car," she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. Caleb smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his tired face. "Yeah, kid. Now we're gonna fix you." But Caleb didn't know that by entering this house, he hadn't just taken a job. He had walked into a war zone. And the enemy wasn't a disease. It was something much more human and much more evil. The first week at the Sterling estate was hell. Caleb wasn't just fighting Lily's condition. He was fighting the entire infrastructure that had been built around her illness. The house was designed to keep her invalid. Ramps everywhere, elevators, nurses who did everything for her. "Fire the night nurses," Caleb told Isabel on day 3. They were standing in the kitchen. Isabel was drinking a green smoothie that looked like pond water. Caleb was drinking black coffee. "Excuse me?" Isabel blinked. Lily needs 24-hour monitoring. Lily needs to sleep without someone checking her vitals every hour, Caleb countered. She's exhausted. The body heals in deep REM sleep. She hasn't hit REM in months because of the constant interruptions. And get rid of the wheelchair. You want to take away her wheelchair? Isabel slammed her glass down. How is she supposed to move? Drag herself? Yes, Caleb said calmly. Isabel stared at him with fury. You are cruel. Cruel is letting her rot in a chair because it's easier for you, Caleb shot back. He knew he was crossing a line, but he had to break through the wall Isabel had built. She needs to want to move. Right now, she has no reason to. Isabel dismissed the nurses. She hid the wheelchair in the garage. That afternoon, Caleb found Lily in the living room, sitting on a rug, staring at her iPad. Her favorite stuffed rabbit, a ragged thing named Mr. Bun, was sitting on the sofa, just out of reach. I want Mr. Bun, Lily said, pointing. Caleb sat in an armchair nearby and opened a newspaper. Okay, go get him. Lily's lower lip trembled. I can't. You kicked a metal tray over 3 days ago, Caleb said without looking up. You can crawl. Mummy, Lily screamed. Mummy, help! Isabel appeared in the doorway instantly, her maternal instinct flaring. She took one step forward, but Caleb held up a hand. He didn't look at Isabel. He looked at Lily. If your mum gets it, you learn nothing, Caleb said sternly. You want the rabbit? You possess the muscles. Engage your core. Pull! Isabel stood by the door, her knuckles white as she gripped the frame. Tears streamed down her face as she watched her daughter struggle. Lily cried. She screamed at Caleb. She called him a monster. She dragged her body 1 inch, then 2. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of agonizing struggle. But finally, Lily's hand closed around the rabbit's ear. She collapsed on the floor, panting, sweating. She hugged the rabbit to her chest, then she looked up at Caleb. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked proud. Good, Caleb said. Now, let's try getting back to the rug. Later that night, Isabel found Caleb on the terrace, smoking a cheap cigarette. I hated you today, she said, standing beside him in the moonlight. I know. Caleb exhaled smoke. But I saw her eyes when she got the rabbit. Isabel's voice broke. She looked like she was alive for the first time. She turned to him, and for the first time, the distance between them felt short. Why are you doing this, Caleb? You could have just taken the money and played the nice doctor. My daughter, Caleb said, his voice rough. Chloe. She died 3 years ago. Isabel froze. I thought you were divorced and paying child support. I am. But Chloe, she had leukemia. I spent every waking moment trying to save her. I was the best in the field, and I couldn't save my own kid. I lost my marriage, my license, my mind. Caleb flicked the cigarette away. I look at Lily, and I see a kid who can be saved, and I'm not going to let some rich lawyer or a quack doctor take that away from her. Isabel reached out and touched his arm. Her hand was warm. The electricity between them was undeniable, a sudden spark in the cold night. Arthur is up to something, Isabel whispered. He's been meeting with the board of directors. They're saying I'm distracted by Lily's illness. They want to vote me out as CEO. Let them try, Caleb said, looking at her. You focus on Lily. I'll watch your back. But the threat was closer than they thought. The next morning, Lily woke up screaming. Her legs were burning. Red rashes were spreading up her calves. She was convulsing. Caleb sprinted into the room, Isabel right behind him. What is it? What did you do? Isabel screamed, panic seizing her. Caleb examined the legs. It wasn't muscle fatigue. It was a chemical reaction. He grabbed the bottle of lotion from the nightstand, the lotion the new maid had applied that morning. He sniffed it. Under the scent of lavender, there was something sharp, acrid. Capsaicin, Caleb growled. Concentrated capsaicin extract. Someone laced her lotion. They're trying to simulate a flare-up. They want you to think my therapy is hurting her. Isabel grabbed the bottle. Arthur. We need to get this off her. Caleb scooped Lily up in his arms. To the pool, now! He ran through the house, carrying the screaming child, and jumped straight into the indoor swimming pool, clothes and all. The cool water neutralized the burning instantly. Lily clung to him, sobbing into his wet shoulder. Isabel stood at the edge of the pool, dialing security. But her phone went dead. The lights in the mansion flickered and went out. The electronic gates locked down. They cut the power, Caleb said, treading water, holding Lily tight. We're trapped. The water in the pool was heated, but the air in the vast, vaulted chamber had turned freezing the moment the HVAC systems died along with the lights. Stay close to the wall, Caleb instructed, his voice echoing slightly in the pitch-black room. He was hoisting Lily up onto the tiled deck. She was shivering, her teeth chattering, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was clinging to Caleb's neck like a lifeline. Isabel pulled herself out of the water, her designer clothes heavy and sodden. In the darkness, the billionaire CEO was gone. She was just a frightened mother in the dark. My phone is dead. The landlines are digital, they'll be down too. The panic room is in the east wing, but the electronic doors will be sealed shut. We don't need a panic room, Caleb said, lifting Lily into his arms. He stripped off his soaked mechanic's jacket and wrapped it around the girl, despite his own shivering. We need a defensible position with only one entry point. The library? Second floor, Isabel said, her voice trembling. Heavy oak doors, manual locks. Lead the way. Keep your hand on my shoulder. Don't let go. They moved through the mansion like intruders in their own home. The house, usually a marvel of modern architecture, had transformed into a labyrinth of shadows. Moonlight filtered through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long, skeletal shapes across the marble floors. Every creak of the settling house sounded like a footstep. Arthur wouldn't do this, Isabel whispered as they crept up the grand staircase. He's greedy, yes, but this is assault. This is endangerment. People do crazy things when they're about to lose a golden goose, Caleb murmured, scanning the landing. And right now, Lily is walking, well, crawling, proof that his medical gravy train is over. If she gets better, he loses control of something. I just don't know what yet. They reached the library. It was a cavernous room filled with rare first editions and the smell of old paper and leather. Caleb ushered them inside and threw the heavy deadbolt on the double doors. Is there a fireplace? Caleb asked. Yes, but we need heat. Lily's core temp is dropping. Within minutes, Caleb had a fire roaring in the hearth, feeding it with what looked like expensive decorative logs. He arranged cushions from the sofas in front of the fire. Get her out of those wet clothes, Caleb said, turning his back to give them privacy. Wrap her in the throws. When he turned back, Lily was cocooned in a cashmere blanket, her face flushed by the firelight. Isabel was sitting next to her, still in her wet blouse, hugging her knees. She looked small. Caleb sat opposite them, the fire crackling between them. We wait until morning. The staff will arrive at 7 a.m. Even Arthur can't stop the morning shift without raising suspicion. Tell me, Isabel said suddenly, staring into the flames. Tell me about your wife and your daughter. Caleb poked the fire with an iron poker. The sparks flew up the chimney. My wife, Sarah, left when the money ran out. Treatment for leukemia is expensive, even with insurance. I liquidated everything. The house, the cars, my practice. I became obsessed. I was researching experimental therapies at 3 a.m. every night. She said I loved the disease more than the family. Maybe she was right. He looked at Lily, who had drifted into a restless sleep. Chloe was 6 when she passed. Caleb's voice was barely a whisper. I was holding her hand. I promised her I'd fix it. I promised her Daddy would make the pain go away. And then the monitor flatlined, and I was just a guy holding a dead girl's hand, realizing that all my degrees, all my brilliance, all my arrogance, it amounted to nothing. Isabel reached out across the space between them. Her hand, cold and elegant, took his rough, scarred hand. "You're saving Lily," she said softly. "You're keeping your promise. Just to a different little girl." The moment hung in the air, thick with unspoken emotion. The firelight danced in Isabel's eyes, softening the steel grey to a warm silver. Caleb looked at her, really looked at her. Not as an employer, but as a woman who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. He leaned in, drawn by a magnetic pull he couldn't resist. Isabel didn't pull away. Her breath hitched. Their faces were inches apart, the smell of rain and smoke wrapping around them. Bang! A loud thud against the library door made them both jump. Isabel gasped, pulling her hand away. "Mrs. Sterling?" A muffled voice came from the hallway. "It's Richards, head of security. The power grid was hacked remotely. We just got the manual override working on the exterior gates. Are you safe?" Caleb stood up, grabbing the fire poker. He walked to the door but didn't open it. "Richards, slide your ID under the door." A plastic card slid through. Caleb checked it, then looked at Isabel. She nodded. He unlocked the door. Richards stood there, looking harried, flanked by 2 other guards. The hallway lights flickered back on, blindingly bright after the hours of darkness. "We found the source of the outage," Richards said, looking grim. "Someone physically cut the fiber optic lines in the basement and jammed the cell frequencies. This wasn't an accident, ma'am. It was a siege." "Where is Arthur?" Isabel demanded, her voice turning back to ice. "Mr. Pendleton left the premises 3 hours ago," Richards reported. "He said he had urgent business in the city." "Get the car," Isabel said, standing up and smoothing her ruined clothes. A terrifying resolve settled over her face. "Caleb, get Lily ready. We aren't staying here tonight." "Where are we going?" Caleb asked. "To the one place Arthur can't touch us," Isabel said. "My private penthouse in the city. And tomorrow I'm going to war." The penthouse was a fortress in the sky, 40 stories above Seattle. It was modern, secure, and crucially, Arthur Pendleton didn't have a key. For the next 3 weeks, the penthouse became a rehabilitation center. Caleb worked with Lily every day. The progress was agonizingly slow, but it was real. Without the sedative drip, Lily's personality began to return. She was sassy, intelligent, and fiercely determined. Caleb built a makeshift parallel bar, set using the backs of 2 heavy Italian leather sofas. "One more step," Caleb encouraged, kneeling a few feet away. "Come on, Lil, heel toe, heel toe." Lily, sweating, her face scrunched in concentration, lifted her leg. The muscles quivered. She placed her foot down, then the other. She took 2 unassisted steps before her knees buckled. Caleb caught her instantly. "I did it!" she squealed, throwing her arms around his neck. "Did you see? I walked!" "I saw," Caleb laughed, spinning her around. "You're a machine, kid." Isabel watched from the doorway of the home office. She leaned against the frame, a mixture of joy and sorrow on her face. She had spent the last 3 weeks with forensic accountants, digging through the Sterling Dynamics financials. That night, after Lily was asleep, Isabel called Caleb into the study. The room was strewn with papers. "I found it," Isabel said, her voice hollow. She pushed a thick document across the mahogany desk. "My late husband's trust deed. I never read the fine print. Arthur handled everything after the funeral." Caleb picked up the document. He scanned the highlighted sections. Legalese was not his language, but the numbers were clear. "The Sterling Trust controls 60% of the voting shares in your company," Caleb read. "Beneficiary, Lily Sterling. Trustee, Isabel Sterling." "Keep reading," Isabel said, pouring herself a glass of whiskey. Her hand was shaking. "In the event of the beneficiary's permanent incapacitation or death." Caleb paused, his stomach churning. "Control of the voting shares transfers to the executor of the estate until the beneficiary reaches age 25 or recovers." "The executor is Arthur," Isabel whispered. "If Lily is healthy, I control the company through her. If she is permanently incapacitated, Arthur controls the company. And he's been in talks to sell Sterling Dynamics to a rival firm in China for $4 billion. He can't sell if I have the votes. He needs those votes. Caleb dropped the paper. He wasn't just keeping her sick to make money on medical bills. He was keeping her crippled to sell your company out from under you. $4 billion, Isabel said, tears streaming down her face. He tortured my daughter for a commission check. Caleb walked around the desk. He didn't hesitate this time. He pulled Isabel into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest. He held her tight, his hand stroking her hair, a fierce, protective rage burning in his gut. He's going to lose, Caleb said into her ear. We're going to destroy him. How? Isabel pulled back, wiping her eyes. He has the medical boards in his pocket. Dr. Thorne signed an affidavit stating Lily has a degenerative genetic disorder. If we go public, they'll say I'm in denial and you're a charlatan practicing without a license. They'll take Lily away from me, Caleb. Child Protective Services will side with the experts. Then we don't use the courts, Caleb said, his eyes hard. We use the one thing they can't fake. We use the truth, in front of everyone. The gala, Isabel realized. The Sterling Foundation Gala is this Saturday. The entire board will be there, the press, the investors. Arthur expects you to come alone, mourning your tragedy, Caleb said. He expects to announce the merger in light of the family's struggles. He doesn't know she can walk, Isabel breathed. We've been hiding here. He thinks she's still in the chair. Exactly, Caleb grinned, a sharp, dangerous look. So let's give him a show. But Arthur wasn't idle. The next day, Caleb went out to get supplies, specialized resistance bands for Lily. As he walked out of the store, 2 uniformed police officers stepped in his path. Caleb Reed? Yeah, Caleb tensed. We have a warrant for your arrest. For what? Assault and battery, the officer said, snapping handcuffs on him. And practicing medicine without a license. A Mr. Arthur Pendleton claims you attacked him at the Sterling estate 3 weeks ago, and we have video evidence of you sticking a sharp object into a disabled child's foot. Caleb's blood ran cold. The pen test. They had cameras in the bedroom. They had edited the footage to look like torture. This is a mistake, Caleb said as they shoved him against the squad car. You're being played. Tell it to the judge, dirtbag, the officer spat. As the car pulled away, Caleb saw a black sedan parked across the street. The window rolled down just an inch. Arthur Pendleton's face was visible, smiling. He raised a hand in a mock wave. Caleb slammed his shoulder against the window, screaming, but the siren drowned him out. He was going to jail, and Isabel and Lily were alone. The holding cell smelled of bleach and urine. Caleb sat on the metal bench, his head in his hands. It had been 48 hours. No bail, no phone call. They had blocked him at every turn. The gala was tonight. Reed! The guard banged on the bars. Lawyers here. Caleb looked up, expecting a public defender. Instead, a woman in a sharp navy suit walked in. She looked like a shark that ate other sharks. I didn't hire a lawyer, Caleb said. Mrs. Sterling did, the woman said, opening her briefcase. I'm the best defense attorney on the West Coast, Mr. Reed, and you're walking out of here right now. How? Because Arthur Pendleton made a mistake, the lawyer smiled thinly. He submitted the video footage to the police, but he didn't scrub the metadata. The timestamp doesn't match his assault claim, and Mrs. Sterling just posted your bail. $500,000. Where is she? She's at the convention center. The gala started an hour ago. She told me to tell you, bring the suit. Caleb didn't ask questions. He signed the papers, grabbed the garment bag the lawyer handed him, and ran. Underscore, 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 underscore. The Sterling Foundation Gala was the event of the season. Chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling of the ballroom. 1,000 of the world's wealthiest people were sipping champagne and discussing the tragic decline of the Sterling Empire. On the stage, Arthur Pendleton stood at the podium. He looked dashing and solemn. "It is with a heavy heart," Arthur intoned into the microphone, "that I announce a restructuring of Sterling Dynamics. Our beloved CEO, Isabel, has been under immense strain. Her daughter's condition has deteriorated. To protect the company's future, the board has agreed to a strategic acquisition by Xinghao Tech." A murmur went through the crowd. This was it, the hostile takeover disguised as a rescue mission. "Isabel," Arthur gestured to the side of the stage where Isabel stood. She was wearing a stunning black gown, but her face was pale. She looked defeated. "Please come accept the board's decision." Isabel walked to the microphone. The room went silent. She looked out at the sea of faces. She looked at Arthur, who was smiling his snake-like smile. "Arthur is right," Isabel said, her voice shaking slightly. "My daughter's condition has changed." Arthur nodded encouragingly. "But not in the way he thinks." Isabel's voice hardened. She looked up, her eyes blazing. "And I am not stepping down." "Isabel, you are distraught," Arthur stepped in, trying to take the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, please." Boom! The double doors at the back of the ballroom were kicked open. The crowd turned. Standing there, framed by the light of the hallway, was Caleb. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, looking like 007 with a mechanic's swagger. And he wasn't alone. Holding his hand, wearing a pink dress with sparkles, was Lily. She wasn't in a wheelchair. She wasn't in braces. She was standing. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Cameras flashed wildly. "Lily," Arthur whispered, his face draining of color. That's impossible." Caleb looked down at Lily. "Ready to crash a party, kid?" "Let's do it," Lily beamed. Caleb let go of her hand. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Lily took a step, then another. She walked down the long red carpet aisle towards the stage. Her gait was slightly uneven, a little wobbly, but she was walking. She was walking on her own. Tears streamed down Isabel's face on stage. She dropped to her knees, opening her arms. Lily reached the stairs. She hesitated. Caleb was right behind her, hovering, ready to catch her, but he didn't touch her. "You got this," Caleb whispered. Lily grabbed the handrail and pulled herself up the stairs. 1, 2, 3. She ran across the stage and buried her face in her mother's neck. The crowd erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. People were standing, cheering, crying. It was a miracle unfolding on live television. Isabel stood up, holding Lily's hand. She pointed a shaking finger at Arthur. "You told the board she was dying!" Isabel screamed, her voice amplified by the sound system. "You told the world she was a vegetable! You drugged her! You poisoned my child for money!" Arthur backed away, holding his hands up. This is a trick! That man is a fraud! He's a criminal!" "The only criminal here is you, Arthur," a deep voice boomed. Caleb stepped up to the mic. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "While I was in that holding cell," Caleb said, looking directly into the camera lens, "my lawyer was busy. We didn't just find the trust deed. We found your emails to Dr. Thorne. We found the wire transfers from the buyer in China. $10 million deposited into an offshore account in the Caymans yesterday." The massive screen behind the stage flickered. The emails appeared. The bank statements appeared. Arthur froze. He looked for an exit, but security guards, loyal to Isabel, led by Richards, were already moving in. "Get him!" Isabel commanded. As the guards dragged a screaming Arthur off the stage, Caleb looked at Isabel. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the raw, thumping beat of his heart. They stood there, the billionaire, the mechanic, and the little girl who defied the odds, bathed in the spotlight. Isabel didn't care about the cameras. She didn't care about the board. She walked over to Caleb, grabbed the lapels of his tuxedo, and kissed him. It was a kiss that promised forever. A kiss that said, "Thank you, I love you, and you are mine." The crowd went wild again, but the story wasn't quite over, because happy endings are never that simple. As Caleb pulled away, Smiling, he looked towards the back of the room. A man was standing there in the shadows, watching. A man Caleb hadn't seen in 10 years. A man who shouldn't be there. It was Dr. Silas Vance from Johns Hopkins, the man who had ruined Caleb's career. The man who knew the one secret Caleb hadn't told Isabel. And he wasn't smiling. The applause was dying down, replaced by the chaotic hum of a room processing a miracle. Police officers were escorting a thrashing Arthur Pendleton out the side exit, his threats echoing off the marble walls. Isabel was holding Lily tight, her face buried in her daughter's hair, sobbing with relief. But Caleb wasn't looking at them. His gaze was locked on the man standing in the shadows of the VIP balcony, Dr. Silas Kincaid. The man was a legend in neurosurgery. He was also the man who had chaired the ethics committee that stripped Caleb of his license 3 years ago. He was the man who had looked Caleb in the eye after Chloe died and called him reckless and incompetent. Caleb's heart hammered against his ribs. If Kincaid was here, it meant the medical board was involved. It meant Caleb's public display of medical intervention on Lily, without a license, wasn't just heroic. It was a confessed felony. Kincaid descended the stairs, his cane tapping rhythmically. He moved like a king snake, slow and purposeful. The crowd parted for him. He walked straight up to the stage. Isabel looked up, wiping her tears. She recognized him instantly. Her protective arm tightened around Lily. "Dr. Kincaid," Isabel said, her voice steel again. "If you are here to defend Arthur or Dr. Thorne, I suggest you speak to my legal team." Kincaid stopped at the base of the stage. He didn't look at Isabel. He looked at Caleb. "I'm not here for them," Kincaid said, his voice raspy and dry. "I'm here for him." Caleb stepped forward, shielding Isabel and Lily. "It's over, Silas. You can have me arrested. I don't care. The girl is walking. That's all that matters." "Arrested?" Kincaid let out a low, humorless chuckle. He reached into his tuxedo jacket. The security guards tensed, hands hovering over their holsters. But Kincaid only pulled out a thick, folded envelope. He tossed it onto the stage at Caleb's feet. "Open it," Kincaid commanded. Caleb hesitated, then crouched down and picked up the envelope. His hands, usually steady enough to calibrate an engine to the micromillimeter, were shaking. He tore it open. Inside were patent documents and a timeline. Caleb scanned the pages. His eyes widened. The breath left his lungs in a sharp gasp. This is my research, from the pediatric leukemia trials." "Yes," Kincaid said. "The research you were told was flawed. The research the board claimed caused your daughter's complications." "I don't understand," Caleb whispered, the room spinning. "It wasn't flawed, Caleb," Kincaid said, his face twisting with something that looked like regret. "It was revolutionary. It was worth billions. But you were young. You were idealistic. You wanted to give it away for free to children's hospitals." Kincaid pointed a shaking finger at the exit where Arthur had been dragged out. "Arthur Pendleton approached me 3 years ago. He represented a consortium, including Xinghao Tech. They wanted the patent, but they couldn't have it as long as you owned it. So, we adjusted the data. We made it look like your treatment failed. We ruined you so we could buy your work for pennies at the bankruptcy auction." A silence heavier than death fell over the group. Isabel gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Caleb stood frozen. The guilt that had eaten him alive for 3 years, the belief that he had killed his own daughter with his arrogance, was a lie. He hadn't failed Chloe. He had been sabotaged. "You killed her," Caleb said, his voice so low it was terrifying. "You delayed her treatment to steal a patent. And she died." "We didn't intend for her to die," Kincaid said quickly, fear finally entering his eyes as Caleb took a step off the stage. "It was just business. But then they got greedy. They used a derivative of your formula on Lily to suppress her nervous system, to mimic paralysis." Caleb lunged. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He just launched himself off the stage, tackling Kincaid to the ground. The old man crumbled under him. Caleb raised his fist, a lifetime of rage and grief fueling the blow. "Caleb, no!" Isabel's scream cut through the red haze. Caleb's fist hovered inches from Kincaid's terrified face. He was breathing hard, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat of the night. "He's not worth it!" Isabel cried, running down the stairs, Lily limping bravely behind her. "Caleb, look at me. Look at Lily. Don't trade your future for his past." Caleb looked at Kincaid, a pathetic, greedy old man who had sold his soul. Then he looked at Lily. The little girl was watching him, her blue eyes wide. She wasn't scared of him. She was waiting for him to be the hero she knew he was. Caleb slowly lowered his fist. He grabbed Kincaid by the lapels and shoved him back against the floor. "You're going to prison," Caleb spat, "for a long, long time." "I know," Kincaid whispered, defeat slumping his shoulders. "I turned myself in an hour ago. That envelope contains my confession. I had to tell you. I couldn't live with the ghosts anymore." Police officers swarmed in, pulling Kincaid to his feet. As they led him away, Caleb remained kneeling on the floor, the adrenaline crashing out of him. He felt hollowed out, but for the first time in years, he also felt clean. The stain of failure was gone. He felt a small hand on his shoulder. "You fixed me," Lily whispered. Caleb looked up. He smiled, a broken, beautiful smile. "No, kid, you fixed me." 6 months later. The sun was shining on 1400 Skyline Drive. The gloom that had shrouded the Sterling estate was gone, banished by open windows and the sound of life. The pool, once the site of a desperate escape, was now splashing with water. "Watch this!" Lily yelled. She stood on the diving board. Her legs were strong, the muscles defined. She didn't need braces. She didn't need a wheelchair. She bounced once, twice, and performed a cannonball that sent a spray of water over the deck. Caleb, sitting in a lounge chair, shielded his face with a laugh. "Refrain from drowning the staff, please." He wasn't wearing a grease-stained jumpsuit anymore. He was wearing linen pants and a casual shirt, looking healthy and rested. The glass door slid open, and Isabel walked out. She was carrying a tray of lemonade. She looked different, too. Softer, happier. The Ice Queen had melted. She set the tray down and sat on the edge of Caleb's chair, running her hand through his hair. "The lawyers called," she said softly. "Which ones? The ones suing Arthur or the ones reinstating my license?" Caleb asked, taking her hand. "Both," she smiled. "Arthur pleaded guilty to all counts. He's looking at 20 years. And the medical board. They not only reinstated your license, Caleb, they want to name the new pediatric wing at St. Jude's after Chloe." Caleb looked out at the ocean, the blue horizon stretching forever. He thought of his daughter. He didn't feel the crushing weight of grief anymore. He felt a gentle peace. She was gone, but her name would save thousands of other children. "I'm not going back to the hospital, though," Caleb said, looking back at Isabel. "No?" She raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to do? Fix Bentleys?" "No," Caleb grinned, nodding toward the pool where Lily was swimming like a fish. "I have a full-time job right here. Besides, I was thinking of expanding the garage, maybe turning it into a private clinic for the difficult cases, the ones everyone else gives up on." "Listen." Isabel leaned down and kissed him. It was a slow, deep kiss that tasted of lemonade and sunshine. "Dr. Reed," she whispered against his lips. "I think that's a perfect idea." "Hey!" Lily yelled from the pool. "Are you guys kissing again? Gross." Caleb broke the kiss, laughing. He stood up, grabbed Isabel's hand, and pulled her towards the water. "What are you doing?" Isabel shrieked, laughing. "Caleb, this is silk." "It's washable," Caleb shouted. He jumped in, pulling the Billionaire CEO with him. They hit the water with a splash that washed away the last of the past. Under the water, holding the woman he loved and watching the daughter he had saved kick her legs with joy, Caleb Reed finally knew the truth. He wasn't just a mechanic. He wasn't just a doctor, he was a father, and for the first time in a long time, he was home. What started as a simple car repair turned into a battle for a little girl's life, proving that sometimes the experts are wrong, and the only credentials that matter are instinct and love. Caleb didn't just fix a Bentley. He dismantled a conspiracy and rebuilt a family from the ashes of tragedy. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And if you want more tales of redemption, justice, and love triumphing over evil, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. What would you have done in Caleb's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.